Cool, awesome. Any other questions around this? Okay, cool. All right, so we got those two parts of the homework done, right? We see back testing the simple stock bot yourself, right? And then once we do that, what you should have done is taken a screenshot, boom, screenshot, and then sent it over to the algo trading channel, right? So that would be the completion of this homework, right? And then actually, sorry, there's one more thing that would give you bonus points is modify this prompt to make another stock trading strategy, right? So we could say, for example, I could say switch this to use, I don't know, QQQ instead, right? And it'll switch it over. Okay, so here I told it switch this to use QQQ instead. So basically switching the stock. And you can see here now it's thinking about different stuff. My action plan, updating the asset. So the user wants to swap it out, blah, blah, blah. We're just going to call refine strategy, which is what it's doing here. And it's going to give me that new result. All right. So that would have been how you'd complete your homework in total. And then once you do this, you could also ask it to run another back test, and you can kind of keep going down that path as well. All right. Let's refine the strategy and give it a few more seconds. We'll see the result. And you'll see, because I want to show you guys how this turns into like a version 2, and you can actually switch versions, right? You see here that's even calling the tool, it's switched to version 2. And if you actually go in here, you'll see version 2. Version 1 was the original one we made. Version 2 is this new one. That's under strategy details, and under code, you have the ability to switch versions. So a lot of people, when they go through building strategies, they'll see that there's multiple versions getting created. So keep that in mind as you're doing this stuff here, right? Version 2 is going to do different things than version 1. And it even says here, what changed in this revision? Swap the target asset from TQQQ to QQQ, right? So it explains exactly what changed, right? And you can actually do that for each version. I can switch back to version 1, or I can switch to version 2, right? We can see exactly how all that stuff's working, right? And that's a pretty important thing, knowing about versions, because some people, when they go through this, I've seen some people go to like 100 versions, right? They're like editing a strategy, making changes. Getting to 100 versions is not that crazy. So understanding how the whole versioning system works is pretty important. For example, if you switch over to, a new version or whatever, know that usually whatever version you're on is whatever version the AI is going to be working with, right? So if you're working with version 2 and you tell it to change something, it will change version 2. But if you switch to version 5 and you tell it to change something, it will change version 5. So just keep that in mind, that basically whatever version you're on is the one that it's going to be, researching or editing or whatever. All right. Okay, cool. Any questions around that? That's kind of a long-winded way of going through the homework. It's also a little bit of what we're going to be covering today, so it's a bit of a preview. One more thing actually that I will show you here is when you run a back test, you also do have all these extras here. We have the graph, we have the annual return, max draw, and all that. But then also you can hit view details and you can get into the weeds of it. This is actually a new thing that we added as well, where you have your graph here again. And then in here, you could actually take a look at, okay, this is the price of TQQQ. You can see it changing. And then here's our moving average. And you can actually even see the trades on here. So it helps you better understand when this thing got in and out and why, right? So you can look at actually indicators on a graph with like your underlying security, and you can actually understand, oh, okay, this is why it traded, this is why it happened. Like here, you could tell it's buying and selling when it crosses this moving average, right? So when it crosses above, it buys. When it crosses below, it sells, right? And you can actually see that happening all throughout here. Bought, sold, bought, right? So if you want to analyze it, this is how you would do that, right? And then you could also get into the raw trades here. Okay. And then with every back test, you also get a bunch of files. You get a tear sheet. You get CSV files they could use to analyze, and there's a lot of details in this stuff as well. If you really want to get into the weeds, the tear sheet is actually quite useful. So it'll show you a lot of drawdown periods, underwater plots. It will show you, all sorts of really interesting metrics behind all this stuff if you want to get super geeky into it. If you want to nerd out on your strategy, this is the way to go. Tear sheet will give you quite a bit of details. All right.
Quick question, Rob.
Yep.
Say, on the different versionings of your system, will it tell you what you changed? Like what did you add or
Yes.
subtract?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what this thing right here is. This what changed in the revision, right?
Oh, okay, good.
Swap the target asset from TQQQ to QQQ, right? So
Okay.
this is explaining what changed in version 2,
Okay, good.
right? Yeah, and then you see the infographic is now different. It's showing QQQ. The name of the strategy, we've actually been debating whether we should change the name of the strategy when you change the symbol, right? Because in this case, it's still called TQQQ, even though we are trading QQQ. So that's something I want to keep, I want to put in the top of your guys' heads, because it could potentially cause some confusion. Because if you started a bot trading one asset and then you told it to trade another, it doesn't change the name. You could edit the name yourself if you want to, but we have opted to not change the name automatically, because I think that would probably be even more confusing to change the name automatically for you. We don't actually have an elegant solution around this yet, but if you guys have one, please let me know. Because sometimes this name of the strategy can go out of sync with what it actually is doing, right? If you look at the infographic, it does help you sort that out a bit, because it does say it's trading QQQ, even though the title is the TQQQ. So just keep that in mind when you see stuff like this, right? Okay. Any other questions around kind of what was expected from the homework and how to get all that stuff done? Okay. All right, so let's jump into the meat of today's session. So we're going to be covering a couple of things. Like I said, we're going to cover technical analysis. We're going to build a strategy together, and then we're going to deploy that strategy. So let's talk about technical analysis, first of all. So this is very popular. So why am I even mentioning technical analysis? Is because so many people bring it up to me that it's one of those things that it's kind of table stakes, I guess, in the trading world these days. So let's talk about kind of what are the basic ones. There's a lot of custom ones, by the way. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll get custom like trading view indicators. You can put that into our system, and it'll actually translate that for you into a LumiBot algorithm, right? But here's kind of the most common indicators that people tend to use, right? So most common is probably the moving average, right? We call it the moving average, or sometimes we even call it the simple moving average, right? Which is basically just the average of the prices over a time period, and it's a rolling window, right? So you'll look back and you'll say, okay, what was the price of Apple going back 100 days? Let's say for a 100-day moving average, get the average of that, and that's the average for today. And then tomorrow, you shift that over by a day, right? So it's that day minus 100 days, and then the next day minus 100 days, and you end up getting this kind of a smooth looking chart of what the strategy looks like, kind of like what I showed you here. I think this one might have been an EMA, but they're both kind of similar, where you'll see the stock moving up and down quite violently sometimes, but the moving average is really staying quite stable because it is an average. So one of the reasons why you might want to use a moving average is simply to do that, to kind of get something a little bit more stable looking.